Aziz is the founder of the Marefat School, located in a primarily ethnic Hazara community in Kabul, with girls making up nearly half the students. He's been recognized internationally for his work in education and activism, and was a finalist for the 2015 Global Teacher Prize. Fleeing Afghanistan meant leaving behind the school he's devoted his life to and the students who he considers his own children.
For me, it was something like I had cut, all my flesh, from my body, and I was just a skeleton that I am dragging that with myself. Really, I was not feeling that I have a soul. I didn't feel that. I felt that everything that I had with myself, that was with these stories, with these memories, with these children, that they were along with me. I was not detached with them.
Aziz and the Marefat School are the subject of the 2017 book, The Last Thousand, One School's Promise in a Nation at War, by journalist Jeffrey Stern. Aziz is also in the process of writing a memoir.
Aziz, it's an honor to interview you. I, of course, read the book about you and your school. Can you describe for us that last day in Afghanistan? What was it like? What was the panic like? How difficult was it getting out of the country?
It's my pleasure again to be here with you. The last day, it was the last day. All the time when you talk about the last day, it means that there is something to be ended. If it is ended forcefully, then there are lots of worries, anxieties, stress. For the people of Afghanistan after 20 years, living in freedom, living in an atmosphere of hope, and they were thinking about their dreams for the future, this ending was a catastrophe. So I was thinking about my children, about my students, that all of the time I had tried to keep them optimistic and tell them that just look at the horizon, everything is bright for you. But now I was hopeless, I was the one that I was a fugitive. As a teacher, I was a fugitive. I was just running away to save my life or the life of my daughters, my wife, pregnant wife. That was really hard.
Last night in Kabul, the United States ended 20 years of war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history.
In the weeks prior to the final U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, desperate Afghans flocked to the airport, cramming into planes, and even clinging to the outside of this U.S. military jet as it took off.
So, the interesting thing about the fall of Afghanistan is the U.S. president came out and said it's not going to fall quickly. And then, of course, it did. And all the chaos that we saw on television. Did you have a sense that the end was coming? Do you prepare for that? Or you're a hopeful person, you're an optimistic person. Do you hold out hope? No, maybe it'll hold on. What goes through your mind?
Actually, for me, the story began just on 14th of April, when President Biden announced that the U.S. troops would withdraw from Afghanistan. Just at that same day, I made a pause. Till then, I didn't think about evacuation, fleeing, or leaving the country at all. I didn't have passport. I didn't have even the electronic national ID, which is a preliminary step to get a passport even. I was not thinking about a visa or applying for these P2, P1, or SIV, or so on. I was just thinking about my work and Marefat. I had my strategic plan for the future. But that day it was really something as a surprise for me. And just one day after that, I came, that is now featured in my memoir as well. I came and I talked with my fellow, the teachers that they were in the executive board of the school. And I told them that I think we are facing with a very bad scenario, because when the Taliban comes, at least there will be no chance for us to continue our works. Just from that night, the advancement of the Taliban or the change of events in Afghanistan took a speed that it was beyond our imagination. And every day you could see that there was something happening that was unpredictable, till suddenly one day you saw that the Taliban entered the city with a single bullet shoot. You know, the Kabul is 6 million people, more than 6 million people. We had 300,000 so-called, trained soldiers in Afghanistan. At least 100,000 of them were in Kabul. We had all these political leaders. We had the international community agencies, the embassies, all of them. They're in Kabul, but Taliban entered to the city without even a single bullet. And that was a surprise. That was amazing. For me, it was unbelievable.
You have to scramble when things like this happen, and you've got to get to the airport, and you've got to get on a plane, and you've got to get out. And we've seen all of these episodes of people just racing to the airport and all of the struggles. Give me a sense of what that day was like for you.
Actually, I said that, I didn't have passport. I didn't have even national ID of myself. That day was the day that I had to go and collect my national ID. I was just heading to the passport office to join my family and to get my biometrics done. Then at that point, I received a call from my friends, my colleagues. They said that the Taliban have reached around, in a place that around 3 miles, from the school. So it was the time that I decided, because I had, a pre-plan of A, B, C, D, and that was just the plan D of me. That was the plan D, that I have no chance even to take even my books. So I have to hide myself and I have to flee. And from there, I called my wife and my children that they should go in a shelter. I had arranged for that. That was friends of mine house, and I would also reach them. Then from there, we went to the friend of to another house which was close to the airport, around 5 minutes. It was close to the Ministry of Interior, so we went there for hiding. And from then, I was in hiding for 3 days, and all these 3 days, I made lots of attempts to enter to the airport. Then, anytime that I would come to the airport, there was a barrier. For once, even we faced to the Taliban. We went to the airport, that a caravan of the Taliban just stood there 1 meter behind, close to us.
A friend of Aziz managed to get Aziz and his family on a plane and out of the country. Eventually, they made their way to the United States.
Aziz, I know you're working on a memoir, you're writing that. Can you talk about that process? And of course, you mentioned your wife was pregnant. Obviously, you've had a baby. Talk to us about that experience and what's it been like?
Thank you. It was maybe interesting, but it was an exploration for me to see another phase of life. I had experienced many things in my life, but not this one.
And so the birth of your child, it has a significant name, doesn't it?
Yeah, she was born here in Quantico just 4 days after we arrived here in the camp in Virginia. And her name is Raha. Raha means free and emancipated.
It wasn't the first time Aziz had to flee his country. He was only 10 when he became a refugee in Pakistan after the Soviets invaded Afghanistan.
I'd like to go back in time to your personal background. You had to leave school at a pretty young age. You had to flee to Pakistan. Can you describe that early childhood and how that formed the person who's sitting across from me today?
Yeah, I was in grade 3 that the communist coup happened in Afghanistan. Then the year after that, the Soviet invaded, our country. I was in grade 5. Then I fled the city, Kabul, along with my family. Went to the Central Highlands and Ghazni province in the southern province of Afghanistan. After 1 year, then again, because the Soviets, as they are showing that here now in Ukraine, they were indiscriminately bombarding. From the top of the mountain, we were just watching that what's going on. Then we saw that these planes left the villages and they returned back. We then climbed down. We came to the village and we saw that everything was in smash and that there were lots of people killed and they were injured. So my father especially, he got scared. And the next day, he told me to leave Afghanistan and go to Pakistan. And he was just searching for a person to just take me. So I didn't have any family companion with me, just the people that they were going to Pakistan on the way to Iran. My father handed me to them. And at the time that he said goodbye to me, he kissed, my forehead and said that, my son, go and stay alive. So this word of him, I think, remained, in the backyard of my mind forever, that I should stay alive. This is the wish of my father. Then I went to Pakistan, and it was very harsh times. I had this envy of, leaving my class and my teachers, my class fellows, the envy of my city that I really loved, at Kabul at that time. And I was living in the refugee camps in very harsh times. I was working in the factories and the bakeries, I was suffering a lot. But the good point was that at that time, as I told, I came across with these intellectuals that they were also the leftists, but they were the Maoists, they were not from the Soviets bloc. So they had also fled, and they were in Quetta, Pakistan. My uncle, he had his friends there, and they, because of their friendship to my uncle, they came and they just, helped me just with introducing me with the books, or sometimes to, helping, but not anything to nourish me or to provide me with shelter. So I went on for around 4 years. I think I shaped my mind there. And I found some of the gurus of my teaching methodology as well there. For example, Paulo Freire. I read his book when I was at the age of 15, maybe. It was translated in Farsi, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. At that time, because I felt myself as an oppressed, I felt that even the title of that was something tempting to me, that I thought that it is for me. Because I'm an oppressed, it teaches me something that I can find. And then I went on, and from then, I got, the feeling sometimes something as an importance attached to education. When I returned back to my village at the age of around 16, I started educating my brothers and my sister that they were nearly at the same age of mine. Then some other children from the village. And from then, I became a teacher.
Aziz started Marefat in Pakistan as a school for Afghan refugees. The school moved to Afghanistan when Aziz returned to his home country in 2002. For Aziz, equal access and critical thinking are central to a quality education.
What is the role of a teacher? Because it's more complicated than just throwing out facts. As you point out, you really have to engage the mind. It's kind of creating that creativity in the mind. It's beyond just giving them facts and figures.
Traditionally, I think you have a picture from a teacher that there is a podium, there is a position that you stand there and you cross something that you have to your students. This is also a teacher. But from another perspective that I had, because I didn't experience that myself, I didn't have such teachers. I had the teachers as my gurus, that they were sitting beside me, or while we were walking, we were talking, we were getting, something from each other. I thought that they were just facilitating, the process of learning and understanding to me. And they were not questioning me a lot. They were not, putting me on trial to test me that at what level I am, I learned for myself that most of the time you cannot know that what potential or capacity is among these, hundreds of kids that are in front of you.
The Taliban reneged on a promise to allow girls to go to school. Currently, Afghan girls are barred from attending school beyond the 6th grade. But the female students at Marefat are still trying to pursue education on their own.
Fortunately, in the time that we were in exile in Pakistan, we developed this idea, at least in terms of its ideas, in terms of the concepts. When it came to Afghanistan, thanks to the presence of the international community, with all these new concepts that came to Afghanistan, human rights, civil society, democracy, separation of powers, or these kinds of ideas that provided me with a ground that I could lay the foundation of this experience we call that Marefat.
For people who aren't familiar with the book, The Last Thousand, and I thought it was a fantastic book, and I interviewed Jeffrey Stern, as you know, about your school, Marefat. What's fascinating about it is here's a guy, you, deciding that you're going to start this school and you're going to educate girls, and these girls, many of them, this was even with the Taliban not really there present, it was not something that went over well in the community. There were a lot of people who, no, this isn't a good idea. You had your struggles even before the Taliban arrived. Describe what it was like getting that school going, and what was the commitment inside you that girls need to be educated?
Girls' education was completely a weird issue. There was no person, to think about girls' education, but we started there. And for me, especially, girls' education was the main issue. That I thought that the cultural vision of the community doesn't change if we do not educate the girls, the boys or the male members of the community. If they get educated, that it doesn't change the cultural vision of the community. It doesn't change the mentality of people. This is the girls that they can change. So for them, I think it was a process of understanding themselves, valuing themselves, not to be all the time judged by something from the outside.
And I think that that's one of the treasures they'll carry on even as they struggle through these dark days ahead. But Aziz, thank you so much for talking to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. It was my pleasure to talk to you.